Hello and welcome. My name is Tarmo Ramel and I'm here to give you some tricks on formatting in Microsoft Word. You might be working on a term paper, you might be working on your thesis or dissertation, and you need some ideas on how to quickly format and style the work that you have. Now I have an open brand new Microsoft Word document behind me. It's maybe a bit small for the screen, so I'm going to go down to the right hand corner and I'm simply going to expand or zoom in a little bit so that you can see things better behind. You can also follow my cursor. It's highlighted in yellow here to help you identify where I'm pointing to things on the screen. You might be saying, well, what am I formatting here? There's nothing on the page. It's like a blank document. That's the scariest thing in the world. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm very quickly going to produce a document here that we can edit. And I'm going to do that by typing in equals rand. I'm going to create 20 paragraphs with some 20 sentences a piece, and lo and behold, we have lots of random text on the page that we can now work with. The one thing that you'll probably notice is that between paragraphs we have a space, but the paragraphs aren't indented. While this style is completely fine in some applications, sometimes you need no spaces between paragraphs and you need the paragraphs to be indented. Going through and doing that manually, paragraph by paragraph, can be quite tedious. It also opens you up to making mistakes and missing various components. Now, there's a much easier way to do that, and you can do it by setting it up at the very beginning of your work. But it's also really easy to go and afterwards make those stylistic changes as well. And I'm going to show you how to remove those spaces between the paragraphs and how to indent your paragraphs really quickly. The first thing what we're going to do is we're going to look at what the structure looks like, and then we're going to come back and do the work. So on the home ribbon, if we head over here to this show hide button, this reveals the codes in our document. And as I do that, if I turn it on and off, you'll see that there's things on the screen that appear and disappear. So let's leave them on, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so that we can see things in slightly more detail. First of all, I'd like to bring your attention to this character here. This is the hard return. It's as if you were typing your text and you hit the return or the enter key, depending on what kind of keyboard you have, and it takes your cursor to the next line. It starts a new paragraph. It's called a paragraph marker, and when you see those, you know that someone has hit that enter or return key on the keyboard. So after each paragraph, we will see those kinds of marks. I'm going to scroll over to the right hand side, and you see there's one at the end of this paragraph. There's one at the end of that paragraph, and so on. So if I went in here and I put my cursor between the words cover and page and I hit enter, notice that it puts in the paragraph mark, it puts a space between my paragraphs, and it starts the new paragraph with the word following where I entered my keystroke for enter or return. I don't want that. I'm going to hit backspace and remove that back out. The second thing that you'll notice are these little dots between each of the words, and those simply, if I turn the codes on and off, are the spaces in the document, which makes it really handy to scan through your text and pick out cases where you might have 2 spaces or 3 spaces by mistake between letters or words or terms in your writing. So when you're trying to ensure consistency, it's a really great way of ensuring that there's only 1 space or 2 spaces before or after brackets, after sentences, and so on, so that you can ensure that your typesetting looks absolutely perfect. So reveal codes, really a handy way to do that. So I'm going to simply remove those because we don't need those extra spaces. Okay, let's go back and zoom out just a bit so we can see the whole width of the document on the page at one time, and let's scroll up. Our goal here is to remove the spaces between the paragraphs. So we're going to again go up to the home ribbon. We're going to slide across here to the section that has the tools on paragraphs, And we're going to click on this little downward arrow for paragraph settings here. And it's going to open up specific tools related to the styling of paragraphs in our document. We're going to start by going down here to the spacing section. And currently we see that there are no automatic spaces added before each paragraph, but there's 8 points of spacing after each paragraph. So when we are typing and we hit enter or return to start a new paragraph, it automatically adds 8 points of space before it starts the next paragraph. We can go here and hit the down arrow and set that to 0. We could simply highlight this number and hit 0 on our keyboard as well. But the whole idea here is to remove that automatic space inclusion when we're typing. We're then going to head up here to indentation, and we don't want to indent globally everything on the left or the right. That's just going to bring in our page margins on one side or the other, and there's a much better place to do that in terms of global page layout. But what we want to do is, under the special setting, is apply to only the first line of each paragraph a 1.27 centimeter indent. That is our tab, the moving in of the first line of each paragraph. And we can change that value. 1.27 centimeters is quite standard, but we can use these keys to up or down the increment of that number, or we could simply type it in. But once we've done this, we can hit OK, and the entire document will update. So I'm going to zoom out just so that we can see what it looks like. I'm going to scroll up to this page. Oh, I may have forgotten to set this for the entire document. So again, it's really nice that I can see that we have the paragraph marker and we have a space in here, but I forgot to do a Control A to select the entire document and then go back up to the paragraph tools. We can set the spacing after each paragraph to 0. We can choose the first line indent, set it to 1.27 and hit OK. And now we see that our paragraphs are structured correctly. So when we have a paragraph symbol or a carriage return, it's going to start a new paragraph, and the new paragraph is going to be indented by 1.27 centimeters. And as we scroll through our document, it's all done in the same way. It might look a little bit busy. Zoom in just a tad. We're going to remove those codes so that we don't see the paragraph marks and the space markers, and now we have something that makes a lot of sense. That's the first piece of editing: spaces between paragraphs and ensuring that our paragraph indents are the way that we'd like them to be. The second thing that we want to do is control where we have page breaks. Sometimes we want all of our new sections or chapters to begin at the top of a new page. It could be that we have some front matter in our document and we want the table of contents to start at the top of the page rather than partway down a page, which looks a little bit awkward. So we can always control where those page breaks happen. And we can simply put our cursor where we want the page break to occur at, and we can hold down the Control key and hit Enter, and it will insert a page break, and notice that it starts us now on the next page. It's hard to see what we just did, so let's turn those codes back on, and we see that we have a paragraph marker there that we don't necessarily need, so I hit Delete and I remove that, and it brought the text back up. But if I'm going to scroll back up to the previous page, notice that we now have a page break. It tells us that when we get down to this point in the document, we then hit a page break, and everything afterwards is going to be moved to this next page. So we can control the alignment of things, and that page break is going to move around attached to this point of our document. So that's really quite a handy tool, and it's really great for spacing things out. But it doesn't help us if we want to insert a page that might be rotated landscape relative to the rest of our document that is in the regular portrait orientation. In order to do that, what we need to do is insert a special form of page break. It's called a section break, and allow us to have a section break followed by another section break, so that we now have 3 sections to our document, and we can then take the second section and we can rotate the orientation of that page. So let's take a look at how we might do that. I'm going to hit the back arrow up at the top here to undo that insertion of the page break, and I'm going to turn those codes off for a moment, and I'm going to just zoom out a little bit so that we can see more of the text on our page. So imagine we wanted to take this text here and add it to a page that was rotated to be in landscape form. I mean, sometimes we have wide tables or figures that would benefit from that kind of orientation, but for the time being, let's just take this text, and so that we can keep track of where it is, let's change the color of this text to be blue. So we have this blue text. We want this to be on a separate page that's rotated landscape, but to have the rest of our document still maintaining its portrait orientation. So what we're going to do is we're going to head up here to the end of the text that is going to remain as it is, and we're going to head over to Layout, the Layout tab, and we're going to find this entry for breaks, but we're going to click on this little down arrow here, and we see that there's a whole series of different types of breaks that we can insert. And what we want to choose is next page. So this is a section break, but it's going to work like a page break because it's going to move everything else to the next page. So I hit enter, and it looks like it behaved just like a page break that we had before, but if I scroll up here, go back to the home ribbon, and I turn the codes on, notice that it now says section break next page. So once we get to the end of this paragraph, it's telling us the section ends, we're going to start on the next page. And when we come down here and say, oh, all of our blue text is here, that's really great. Let's go to the end of the blue text and do the same thing. We're going to go to the layout ribbon, we're going to find the breaks tool, we're going to click on the little down arrow and head down to next page. So now we have all of that. What we had as the blue text is on one page. It's got a section break at the end of it. The page preceding it has a section break, and what we want to do is modify the orientation of this section, this part that contains our blue, to on a page that is now oriented landscape rather than portrait. So we're going to head over here to the Layout Orientation button, and we're going to click Landscape. And if we scroll, we can see the outlines of the pages here. At the top of our document, these are still in portrait. When we hit the section break, it comes on down to the next piece, which is now in landscape orientation. We hit the section break, and we're back to regular portrait orientation. So it allows us to very cleanly adjust very specifically for individual pages or groups of pages specific characteristics of their layout and design. And there's a whole series of tools here in the page setup, and including this little down arrow here, which allows you to change all kinds of settings. You can play with margins, you can change paper size, you can play with layout, but what's really, really interesting is at the bottom of each of these tools, it says apply to, and it says apply to this section, or from this point forward, or to the whole document. And if your cursor is in the section that you want it to work in and not impact anything else in your document, then ensure that it says this section. And when you do that, it's going to only apply those settings to the section that you've identified. So the break to the next page creates a section break that allows you to modify the page characteristics for that section alone. It's also really great for changing styles of page numbers. And while we don't generally want to have specific page number styles changing because the orientation of the page changed, sometimes we need to suppress the page numbering so that the page number prints in the correct location. But it also helps us to separate to the front matter from the body text of your document, where you might have lowercase Roman numerals in the front matter and then regular Arabic numerals in the body text. And we can do that by having these section breaks and applying different page numbering to each section. So again, if we go to this first section, I'm going back to home. I'm going to turn these show codes off, and I'm going to head up to the insert ribbon. And on the insert ribbon, we're going to scan across here for page numbers. And we're going to select bottom of page, and we're going to choose, let's say, this plain number, and it's going to add page numbers for us in our document. So that's a really great way to see it, and you can see that it says puts them into into the headers of the section. I guess I chose the header. I'm going to go back here. And what we can do is insert page numbers. So we're going to head up to the insert ribbon and come across here to page number and hit the little down arrow, and we're going to choose bottom of page, and we're going to choose, let's say, a page number style that looks like this. And it puts us nicely into the footer of the page, and it automatically increments as page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and so on throughout our document. But when we get to this page that's oriented in landscape, you imagine if you sent this job to the printer and you take this page and it's printed and put into a printed document, the page number is going to be in the top right hand corner, and it's going to be rotated looking in the wrong angle for flipping through the document. So sometimes what we want to do is suppress these page numbers. So where it says here currently same as previous, we can go in here and we can modify this so that it isn't the same as previous. So we can up here say link to previous. Well, we're just going to turn that off, and I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to delete it. And if I go back up, you can see it still says page 7. There's nothing here on page 8. So we've removed the page number on the rotated page, and then when we come back down here, we can go back and recontinue our page numbering. So we can go back up to insert, go over to page number, bottom of page. We can choose the same style that we had before, and now we have page 9, page 10 here. But when we go back to our landscape page, there is no page number, but we have page 7 remaining up at the top. And what's really great is that by individual sections, we can control what we do with our page numbering, with our layout, our design, and our formatting. So hopefully these are useful tools for you, and stay tuned. We'll have more tips and tricks coming your way shortly.